joined us today. I'm Pastor Ed Treat. I'm the founder and director of the Center of Addiction and Faith. Our mission here is to awaken faith communities to better understand and respond to addiction. We believe faith communities could play a vital role in addressing the crisis that we all have going on right now in this country. And by doing so, we could not only save lives, but also reduce crime, homelessness, incarceration, many of the issues that are deeply tied to addiction. Today, we're excited to welcome our guest, Rob Lee. He's the co-founder of Choose Your Horizon, and he will speak to us about Dry January. I imagine you've heard of it, but we're going to talk about what it is, why you should consider it, and Rob will share some strategies for taking a month-long break from alcohol using tools that he will talk about. I'd like to invite you all to introduce yourselves by putting your name and your location in the chat page. And then later in the hour, we'll have time for Q&A. So if you think of questions as we go along here, jot them down so you don't forget them. So as they come up, write them down and we'll address them later on. And before we begin, let's pause for a moment of silence to ground ourselves and open ourselves up to the Spirit and think about those who are still struggling with addiction. We'll follow that with a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Well, so I'm pleased to introduce our webinar host, George Wood. He's an ordained minister, pastoral care counselor, recovery ministry founder, a recovery activist, the author of The Uncovery and the Uncovery devotional. George hosts his own podcast called The Sober Truth. It's offered every other Friday through the Center of Addiction and Faith and through his own website. Thank you, George, for hosting today, and I'll turn things over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor Ed. Happy New Year, everyone. And just as a reminder, because I know sometimes in the new year we forget, but could you all mute your microphones, and that will give the clearest sound to those that are watching and listening. So yeah, I am just really excited to be here today with you because part of these webinars that we do, it's always interesting to me because we have, these conversations with a wide range of speakers that talk about things from all different avenues in the recovery world. And when we have somebody like today's guest, Mr. Rob Lee, it's really interesting to me personally because, just the work that he's done, just the, coming over here, he's from Ireland. He's lived in America for the last 10 years. And he's currently in Los Angeles where, he is fighting the fires that so many people are. So our thoughts and wishes are with him and the people that he loves he actually said that he may, as soon as he's off this webinar, get out of town. And so definitely thank you for, taking the time to be with us today. But his company, Choose Your Horizon, is very, interesting to me. And I know today he's going to get into the topics around a dry January and how important it is for a person, if they're especially battling anxiety and things like that, to take this time away from alcohol. But at the same time, his company, Choose Your Horizon, that he founded, I believe, 3 years ago or so, has a tremendous telehealth community, and they do some different therapies that I always find interesting. I know my personal recovery journey was not very straightforward. And so they do a little bit of the, the ketamine and treatments, Naltrexone and different avenues like that. And I just hope that we can have him back one day and possibly talk some more about the different ways that they're helping people find success with the recovery. But I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rob Lee as he's going to take us through, just some different tools that you can utilize to help you make it through January, the dry January. I know for me personally, being in recovery, I certainly could have used some tools a little sooner in life. So, Mr. Rob Lee, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thanks so much, George. Appreciate that. Can everyone see my screen okay?
You're good.
Good, it's good to go. So, everyone, thank you for the intro, George. Welcome, everyone. So my name is Rob Lee, and I'm the co-founder here at Choose Your Horizon. Forgive the accent if it comes through too thick and can't understand. Please feel free to pop questions in. But as I said, I'm in Los Angeles, and yeah, I would appreciate any wishes for my community and everyone that's in the city at the moment. It definitely is a stark situation at the moment. But thank you for joining us today. So over the next 30 minutes or so, we'll discuss just kind of practical tools to help you navigate dry January or even damp January, which I think is a little bit more common where, maybe we're not preaching absolute abstinence. Maybe there's a path to drinking less or quitting over time. So just before we get started, it'll approximately, take anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. And interestingly, as I just look out the window here, there are some army helicopters flying towards the mountains. So that's kind of how real it is. But anyways, but feel free to ask questions in the chat as we go along. I'll try to address them throughout, but I think we might have 5-10 minutes at the end just to dive into those questions more specifically. So let's get into it. So we got over the overview. So why do dry January or damp January? It's just an opportunity for us to pause, reset, reflect on your relationship with alcohol or maybe other substances. It's a 31-day commitment to step back from drinking or offering benefits from improved health, more energy, greater focus and clarity. I know that when I come back from holidays in Ireland where Christmas is what we call silly season and there's a lot of fun and joy and celebrations and so on, I really embrace the time after Christmas to get my head straight and focus for the year. And if you hit the ground running with something like dry January, it can really launch you into a better flywheel for the year. So just whether you're looking to reduce your overall consumption, take a break for health reasons, or explore life without alcohol, just it's a great starting point. So we'll discuss things like medication such as Naltrexone to address the actual kind of overlying addiction, but then also powerful tools that get to the underlying mental health conditions that could ultimately driving the addiction in the first place. So I have a nice metaphor or illustration for us to kind of address that in more detail, and I'm sure that will spur some questions. So I'll keep going. So the purpose of dry January. Why do people participate? Why do they participate? So here's some common reasons to improve their physical health. We all like to indulge a little bit over Christmas. I'm sure we could maybe improve our diet, and alcohol really impacts ultimately sleep, your energy levels, your liver health. Your liver is incredibly resilient and can recover rather quickly from sustained drinking. It's good to definitely give it a breather from time to time. But also you get mental clarity. There's nothing worse than coming into work in the morning and maybe having had an extra couple of glasses of wine the night before, and you just don't feel you're 100% or complete focus or haven't been able to give yourself to your career. But also an opportunity to reassess your habits. If you get that opportunity to have mental clarity, you can see just the upside that you can gain by having that extra time or doing more exercise or getting up to the mountains for a hike. And you really get an opportunity to reflect on other parts of your life that maybe you've put on the back burner for some time. So back here. So some of the benefits, kind of reiterating a couple of things here. Reducing or eliminating alcohol can bring noticeable improvements to your life, obviously in physical health, better sleep. I can't address how important just having good sleep is to your overall life and longevity, but also can improve your weight. Generally, your anxiety and depression can be drastically affected by alcohol intake. many ways we're just suppressing anxiety and depression, but we all know that feeling that can come with the following day or the days after having maybe a heavy session of drinking. Not only that, we could save a couple of bucks. The financial impacts of alcohol can be rather serious, and we could all, I bet, write down a couple of things in the chat to say that we prefer to spend our money on our kids or our family or a nice meal, or even donating to the community rather than spending it at the bars. So we'll explore some other of the medicines that I mentioned again to see if we can help support some of these goals. So I'll go on here. So some tools. Achieving success in Dry January requires a bit of preparation. So having some right tools to get you launched is pretty critical. So set some clear goals. I mean, if you drink every weekend, set a goal that you only want to have drinks on one of the weekends. Make it achievable. Abstinence isn't always the way for everyone, but certain people it is necessary. But if you just want to change your relationship, maybe just set a goal. It's only going to be one weekend this month or one night with my partner or so on. Track your progress. There's tons of apps on the web, online. Journal. Use paper and pen. Can't beat it the old classic way. Use your calendar and your phone. Set reminders on your phone. There's just some nice ways to give yourself notifications and remind yourself of your progress. I think accountability is huge. You can set your goals in your mind and say, oh, I'm going to do that. Of course, that sounds great. But unless you write it down, you're not going to hold yourself accountable. And then the next level is telling your peer. And then you'll automatically start to want to not let down your friends or your peers or your community by putting it out there and saying it out loud or sharing it with friends and family. There's tons and tons of non-alcoholic solutions out there at the moment. So you can still get the beer taste if you like, or maybe go for a kombucha. So explore alternatives. And then there's medical support. Look, it can be difficult to do things on your own. And there are medications like Naltrexone, which I'll go into a little bit more detail, that can help reduce cravings and help you stay on track. I'll keep going here.
What?
Was there a question? Sorry, or is that maybe just all good? Okay. I just like to, this is more related to what we're doing at Choose Your Horizon, and the current model of addiction care largely is like rehab and going to a facility for 30, 60, 90 days, taking you out of your family, taking you out of your community. It has like a 15 to 20% success rate, and 85% of the people that go in there relapse within 1 year. Now, it's good they do address the addiction at the top. You kind of mostly it's abstinence, but what's not occurring is getting into the bottom half of the addiction iceberg. So at the top we've got the addiction. It's the smallest part of the iceberg, but it's the bit that we can see the most, and people can notice. And you might think, all right, well, if I get that taken care of, that's it. And for some people that is the case, but ultimately over 50% of the people with an addiction have an underlying co-occurring issue, whether it's grief, trauma, past life experiences, and so on, that you really want to get in and under the iceberg to hack away at that piece to make sure that the addiction doesn't come back. So how we're doing that? We're using medications like Naltrexone in combination with coaching and therapy to get past the surface level issue, address that. That'll just give you a better quality of life right out the gate. Then we're looking at getting to the root cause with the likes of ketamine therapy, which allows you to potentially reframe how you think about it. Won't make the issues go away, they'll always be there, but the fact is you want to reframe how you think about those certain traumas, griefs, and things in the past that have led. The other thing is that likes of psychedelic therapy or ketamine assisted therapy, it can unearth issues that maybe you didn't recognize were there, but it allows you that opportunity to dig deep into the bottom half, or I should say bottom 2/3 of the iceberg. So that's a little bit about how we like to think internally about addiction and mental health at Choose Your Horizon. So this is how we're supporting people with telehealth consultations with licensed clinicians across the US. Our chief medical officer, who I probably should have plugged up here, is Mayo Clinic trained. He's based in Minnesota, I should say. Dr. Daniel Monfil. I'd be delighted to bring him into one of the conversations sometime. I'm sure he'd love to say hello. We provide medication delivered directly to people's homes. So Naltrexone, it's an FDA approved medication for alcohol use disorder. And then also ketamine therapy as part of the mental health conditions. And then we provide personalized plans, coaching, access to therapy. So it's a combination of medication and psychosocial support, which is what will provide lasting results. And then I'd love to see if there's any questions or reflections, and then I'll also, if anyone ever, you can maybe take a screenshot or grab the QR code here while everyone's watching and write down the code. If you ever want to share this with a friend or someone who may need some assistance, there is a 30% discount code with new 30. So happy to take any questions, or if any popped into the chat. Oh, there may be some in the chat. Nope, looks like. So I'll hand it back to the room. I'm happy to answer any questions there that might be lingering.
So this is the group that's here so far, and everybody seems to have their video off. Guess I could turn mine on. George, you want to do any follow-up questions?
Yeah, of course. I was just trying to give the crowd some time. Yeah, I'd like to talk about the naltrexone. What are some of the connections as to how that works? Now, is naltrexone the same that is used in Suboxone and some of those drugs as well?
No, so they work on similar parts of the body. So I'll describe how naltrexone works. It essentially blocks the opioid receptor from the pleasure effects, or i.e. the dopamine hit that you get from drinking alcohol. And similarly enough, that applies to things like even a dopamine hit you might get from your phone, or even porn addiction or anything like that. It's the same mechanism of action that works inside the body. So what that allows, it does the effects from the dopamine that you get there, allows you an opportunity to say, well, actually, I didn't get the pleasure from the alcohol, and actually it's not that fun. So you disconnect that repetitive reward cycle that you would have associated with a compound like alcohol, and it applies to several addictions out there.
Okay, now I know is it difficult to get off of naltrexone?
No, it's not addictive at all. And in fact, there are several, I should say there's two most common ways of taking naltrexone. There's what's called daily naltrexone, and many people start that way, and then it moves to what's called the targeted approach, or the Sinclair method, meaning some people may only take it an hour or 2 hours before they go for dinner or drinking, or they're in an event where they might have an opportunity to go further than they would have liked to, right? And it's not addictive at all. Yeah.
Okay, so a person would get it and take it. This is going to sound weird, but they know they're going to drink, but they would take it anyways.
Yeah. So if to just maybe clarify, with naltrexone, people can drink. Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes. So it's either drink less or quit approach that comes with naltrexone. And the beauty, I think, in terms of how this is being more well received, I suppose, by the sober curious folks, is that they still want to have that glass of wine after work with their colleagues or something like that, but they tend to go 2, 3, 4 more often than they would like to, and that can help that person get to just actually being satisfied with that one glass of wine, for example.
Okay. How would you what advice would you give to somebody who was considering, dry January or stopping drinking or the Naltrexone, like kind of thinking about it? What would be the advice you would give them?
Yeah, it's all about setting realistic goals, in my opinion, George. Like coming straight out of Christmas or New Year's and thinking that you can just quit cold turkey, like the old white knuckle approach, has a really low success rate. So if you can prove to yourself that you can break it down into chunks or achieve small goals into bigger goals, that ultimately you can have a better relationship with alcohol long term. I think Dry January is obviously a good starting point, and it's a great opportunity to discuss changing the relationship with alcohol. But taking, well, a month-long break is good too, but going back to the old habits post January as well can be is more of a yo-yo effect. Really, what you want to do is create lasting change, and in order to do that, it's all about setting smart goals. So, are they realistic? Bite it off and chunk. All right, got to that point. Let's set a new goal, and then ultimately change it long term.
Do you find most of the people that you deal with to be more in the slow down category than the alcoholic who is blowing up their life and needs to completely, stop?
Correct. Yeah, it's I call it the rock bottom, if you will, is more akin to actually going to a facility or inpatient scenario detox, where the people who are coming and I get I review all of the patients that come in, and it's like anything from like the gold digger in West Virginia who just drinks too much after work and he wants to spend more time with his family, to the gardener in Washington who or like it was wine o'clock. This is the audience that are now looking for just that little bit of assistance to spend more time with their family or reduce their financial burden or be more focused at work. Tend to be the most of the people who are helping at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. I got one more question, and I'll turn it over to see if anyone else has any questions. Did your background coming from Ireland have anything to do with this? A few years ago, I was the pastoral care counselor for a parachurch organization that we had, ministries in Ireland, and the alcoholism was such a big issue there because it's such a part of the culture. So, is that how you found yourself doing the work that you do today?
Yeah, in a long sense of it, yes. It's the thing I care most about. Like 10 years ago when I moved to the US, I was just a young buck and wanted to get some experience and have fun, of course. And then naturally, as I got further into the healthcare space, I kind of observed where I wanted to work more passionately, or like where I was more passionate about helping. And that naturally moved into mental health. And in Ireland, we have incredibly high young male suicides, followed by incredibly high addiction to alcohol, albeit probably not recognized for the addiction because it's just a way of life. However, the way I look at it is that if I can make an impact here in the US with this country and helping the millions of people that are suffering here, that it's something that I'd like to bring back to Ireland to replicate, because naturally Ireland can be a little bit behind in terms of like medical advancements. So yes, the underlying passion comes from where I'm from. Ultimately, I've seen it affect my friends, my family. I have friends in rehab right now in Ireland who I've witnessed who would fall more into the category of needing to no longer ever drink again, because that's just how serious it is, to the people who are changing their relationship, and we're having new discussions about actually maybe we'll just do something that doesn't involve alcohol, and maybe we'll have a wine dinner at dinner later, something like that, right? So hopefully that
I mean,
paints a picture. Yeah,
it's very interesting. I don't know if anybody has this approach of I love it. I think it's great. I just, it's interesting. Just I'm not completely abstinent, but here, let's try a different way. With the, I'm sure with the hope being that maybe they do stop all the way, but this is just a way for them to figure out that they can.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
stepping stone, and I've witnessed that it was a total learning curve for
Mm.
us in that, because we and how this has evolved inside of our approach is that when we started out doing ketamine therapy 3 years ago, over 40% of the patients that were coming to see us had co-occurring addiction issues. So we needed to start addressing that first before we could introduce a substance like ketamine, because you couldn't do it in combination with the heavy drinker, basically. And so that's how that came. And then within the research, and then understanding the harm reduction approach, which is not abstinence, it's like changing the relationship. And I think that will and is having a higher success rate. So if you can feed positive feedback by like, or from 1 week to the next, my consumption is down or is improving, that feeds a different reward cycle inside the human, and then ultimately the human is in control to make the decision about whether they want to continue drinking or not.
It's really good. It's really
Yeah.
good.
I see a question about naltrexone availability. Yeah, certainly, Glenda. Thanks. Good question. And when we started doing naltrexone treatments, there was a complete shortage in terms of we couldn't get it at the regular pharmacies or facilities. However, there are methods to compound the medication, and that's what we did to start out. And then the supply issue has lifted somewhat in the more recent months, but that has led to it being a little bit more expensive than you'd expect so. But it is now available, Glenda, at a more reasonable price and volume availability.
So is that through you, or is that generally anywhere?
Yeah, so we provide like mail order medication. So the benefits, I suppose, are having an online video consultation or a message-based consultation with our psychiatrist and having it discreetly delivered to your door. Many folks, kind of want to not have to maybe bring it up with their primary care, for example, or not have to make that trip to the local pharmacy. But that said, Ed, it is available through your primary care if you ask that question. And it is available at local pharmacies as well for pickup. Now, people, as Glenda would have mentioned here, likely were running into supply issues earlier last year.
Does insurance cover this that you know of?
Yeah, it will. It will, definitely. We don't take insurance for this component yet, but it is. So there are companies doing that, and your primary care, again, should be able to, or if you have a primary psychiatrist, should be able to facilitate this as well.
So what is the psychiatrist looking for to qualify someone for naltrexone?
It's largely just a interest in changing your habits with alcohol, and obviously we do audit scores and different things as part of the assessment, but largely anyone who wants to change their relationship is viable candidate for this medication.
Do you have any? I'm sorry, George, is it okay if I keep asking?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just wondering about. Do you have any sense for? I understand that there is. Dr. Jelinek did some work in the 1940s, and he identified different types of drinkers. And he said there's 1% of drinkers are the severe type that need treatment and need to be abstinent. But he said there's this whole chunk of people who are problem drinkers, not necessarily alcoholic, who drink more than they should and just need to learn how to manage and cope. And for so long in our culture, we've had this one size fits all, that if you drink too much, then you need to be abstinent. And but I've seen a lot of evidence now that shows that people can moderate, that if they aren't that 1%, of people who have it so bad they can't control it. That's the, one drink and you're off to the races type drinker. But this is something that offers a great opportunity and a tool for those who might be just drinking too much and it's become a habit and they need to cut back.
You're dead right. Yeah, no, you're dead right in term. I think just society is starting to be more aware of what you've described, and that is that I've noticed it amongst my peers, even the younger generations who are actually drinking less, albeit they're probably picking up vaping or something else. But
Yeah,
that's a whole separate issue. But now obviously I'm a bit closer to it, given it's my line of business and so on. But I have a high awareness of the conversations that are being had and around the tables, and people are more conscious, and they're at that point where they don't want to fully give it away, but they kind of want to change it, and they know it's impacting their life, and that's that cohort that you're mentioning.
What are, if just since from a practical perspective, what are some of the obstacles that a person, that is attempting to do a dry January per se, comes against? And could you give an example of how they can overcome that?
You're asked, like, what would be something that could, I suppose, prevent you from reaching your goals? You mean, George? Yeah. It's kind of putting yourself in difficult scenarios is always the worst. So, like, if you're near the device, typically, so is ultimately one of the worst. So keeping yourself busy with opposite hobbies or activities, or giving yourself a new activity during that period of time to kind of almost keep you busy or distracted, or don't give yourself that opportunity or window to fall into old habits. So keeping busy, filling the void with something that you're interested in, whether pick up a different language, learn chess, go hiking. All those things require a decent amount of commitment and time, and will add value to your brain and life and body. So
are you an actual counselor with the organization, or are you more on the business side?
Business side, 100%. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so I'm asking you all the questions that accounts for a counselor, and you're like, yeah.
I'm close enough to it to kind of know, but it's some of it is just common sense as well, George. It's like when you take a step back, and obviously overcoming the addiction is difficult. There's no question about it. And if you were to take a step back in your own time for a few minutes, you'd say, like, this is all common sense, but why isn't it easy to action? Right? Well, write it down, talk to your peers, start asking questions, set goals, tell people your goals, hold yourself accountable, get your peers to hold yourself accountable, and then it's just a motion, in terms of at least how I would approach it.
Have you ever heard of the dopamine impact from people that talk too much about their goals?
No, that's a good one though.
Yeah, no, it's
seriously.
There is a breaking point where people get a dopamine rush from telling people, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do this. And reality is, if you don't live up to a certain amount of your goals, people stop taking you serious, for one. And, for two, you get that rush from people looking at you. Wow, so congratulations. And as a matter of fact, I'm working with coaching a gentleman right now through alcoholism. And I caution him. I'm like, you got one chance of telling everybody you're stopping, and they're going to applaud you and they're going to stand by you. I go, but you don't get that chance again. You don't, right now they're all happy for you, but you screw up and blow up your life again. You come back and you're going to be like, hey, I'm stopping drinking again. And it's not the same impact. It's not. They're going to look at you and be like, yeah, like you told us 2 months ago and 2 months before that. And
That's
so
so funny, George. I was one of those people when I was early in recovery. I would tell anybody who would give me any attention. I was, I'm in recovery. I quit drinking. And I think I was looking for that dopamine rush. And that was one of the questions I had as you were describing how it prevents that dopamine hit, I thought, well,
Yeah.
there's no place I can get a dopamine hit anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I have hobbies and I have things I do that are healthy that give me, that sense of well-being. And so I would hate to lose those if I was on this medication. And maybe that's why you transition into targeted use.
Mm.
Is
Yeah,
that,
yeah, that is a very good train of thought, Ed, in that people would ask me, well, do I not get the same hit off eating an ice cream or whatever it might be? You know,
I
that
didn't
would,
even think about that.
yeah. And for some people, it doesn't come that way, but some people will notice a dulling, for
Really?
example. Yeah, from that. And so now you got to weigh up the pros and cons, like benefits versus,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and so that's where the targeted does come in later on. And
Sure.
most people will shift to that over time, and then
Mhm.
ultimately, there's people who have like completely quit but like to continue with the medication, and there's people who've got moderation under control and who likely could stop, but it's still their tool and it works for them. And they fall into a nice habit, and
Right,
so
right.
um,
I mean, I could see initially taking it just to get the habit of not drinking anymore, and then moving to targeted for events that you know are going to be high risk, where you're going to be around people that are, like if you're going to a wedding, and a wedding is where a lot of drinking takes place, and you know you're going, you could take the medication and survive that as a strategy for getting through those tough
totally,
places.
totally,
Mm.
yeah,
Because the peer pressure thing is very real. I mean, studies show that if you work for a boss who drinks a lot, everybody in the organization tends to drink a lot more because um, one person's drinking can elevate everybody else's, and so then you end up with an office full of people who have a drinking problem. May not be alcoholic, but they're drinking more than they would prefer to, and
yeah. You're a victim of your surroundings, basically.
mhm.
Mm. Yeah. Do you help in your tools as in the and when the company working with people, do they help craft responses to people? For example, a reason a lot of people fail at events when they're trying not to drink is because they don't know how to say no.
Mm,
They've been to 100 of the events and the guy's like, hey, I'm going to get you that beer, your favorite beer. Like I've said yes 100 times. Why it's going to be weird when I say no.
right,
So I often, when I'm working with people, I'll be like, plan your responses ahead of time. Then you
right.
don't end up in this awkward situation. So already whatever you got to say, whatever you're comfortable saying, but know that ahead of time, you're going to be at a wedding. People are going to ask, it's New Year's Eve. People are going to ask you if you want a shot at midnight, know ahead of time. My response is, and whatever that is.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's not something that at least I have in any of my messaging as far as like my supporting emails and paperwork or whatever, but I love that.
Yeah.
And
Super
I
helpful.
definitely, yeah, I'd love to pick your brain more on that, George, as well, and hear about what you're doing with your work as well.
Yeah, it would be fantastic. Anybody got any questions for us out there? We have
There's
he's risking his life and limb and home just to be on this webinar right now. So
um, I wanted to follow up with a question that somebody directed right to me, but that was, are there support networks available? There are for people who want to be abstinent, but are there support networks for people who want to moderate?
Yes, there is, and let me get one of them here. It is called the TSM meetups. So this is the Sinclair method, TSM meetups, and tsmmeetups.com. Maybe I'll just type it in as well.
Mm-hmm.
TSM meetup, and this is .com. Let me see if there's an email on here too. There is a QR code. No, I'm sure there's a contact on the website, but this is the group that are preaching that abstinence, and they do have meetups. Not preach, I should say. They are preaching harm reduction in terms of drinking less or quit, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they are having meetups. I was actually at one of their meetups in Philadelphia a few months ago with one of the kind of founding researchers on naltrexone, Dr. Valpicelli. It's a small group, but it's a growing group, and it's I think it's something that will continue to grow as this. But it certainly doesn't have as much awareness as the AA community or similar. But that's one that I'm aware of.
Yeah. I do know there's a organization called Moderation Management that I think also does some of that. And
Great.
they are people who want to moderate and just need the help of accountability, which I think is, what 12-step programs are so effective at, is the peer support. I mean, you're just really more inclined to think twice if you know you're going to have to report it to some people that have gotten to know you. And it does make a huge difference. So could we transition into talking about the ketamine and how that is that really a tool for dry January, or is that more for mental health?
Yeah, it's more about getting to the root cause maybe of the addiction. So typically how a program might work is that someone starts on naltrexone to address the addiction, and then we circle back with ketamine therapy to address the underlying depression or treatment. But it's not a first line treatment for alcohol yet. There are studies being done, but I don't think it's as relevant to dry January. But in the analogy of the addiction iceberg, I would like to leave that imprint in people's minds about getting past the surface level addiction into the underlying condition will be part of the lasting change.
What's amazing to me is how widely I don't know how to put this, how much people are impressed with how effective ketamine is. My psychiatrist and several therapists I've talked to said there's nothing that works quite as effectively as they can get a lot more done with ketamine than traditional methods.
Yeah, it is currently as a treatment resistant position. You would have tried a couple of things, therapy, other medications, and so on. And in many cases, if you really think about it, and if there is a co-occurring addiction, if you skip over the addiction piece of it as well, like it may not have the lasting effect that you want to do. So you kind of have to look at the holistic picture of a certain scenario. But it does offer a great tool because it's not a daily pill. It's more of a psychedelic experience. It allows you to rewire your brain. We're all built off of our default mode network. We're hard coded or conditioned from our experiences in life all throughout, and we don't realize that maybe until you get an opportunity to really reflect. And what ketamine does is allows you to disconnect from and rewire the default mode network. I get into the hard drive and rewire it a little bit and reframe how you can think or are thinking about something over time. And typically, it's not one session. You have to do several sessions in support with therapy and coaching. And I've seen some incredible outcomes related to those treatments. So, yeah.
Well, I can testify to that. I was really cautious about doing it because of my own history of being a person in long-term recovery. And I had, serious concerns about it. But the more I investigated, the more convinced I was that it could be useful. And so I went into it, and I've been dealing with low-grade depression, and that gets severe sometimes my whole life. And so I've done all kinds of stuff. A year ago, I went through an episode in life where I just really couldn't get out of where I was, and I did the ketamine, and it's been remarkable.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely remarkable. Yeah, feels like it's given me a whole new life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's tough to get out of the negative mental cycle, and this is it will allow you to pull yourself out of that.
Yeah.
quite
But
quickly.
what doesn't get talked about, what happened for me, and I don't know if this is common, but it was a very spiritual experience, incredibly so. It changed some of my thoughts and feelings about God and how God works. It's profound.
That's amazing.
But being a recovering person, I've been steeped in this abstinence only, to the point where I feel really nervous about saying, offering this as a possibility, because I know that opens a door to some very dangerous thinking for a lot of people in recovery.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole picture. There's the context around everything that people don't see or hear in a soundbite. And so I know last year when I went public with, my support of microdosing and, hallucinogenics as a whole, I as a pastor, took a lot of criticism, some from people that are my friends, that they're like, how can you say this? I'm like, because it works, but you have to understand the context in which it works around, I'm not saying you go give ketamine to the guy on the street and say that that's going to help him get sober. I'm not saying go take a bunch of mushrooms. It's not what I'm saying. There's the context of the story, the narrative in which we live. And I do have since we're on having a deeper discussion here, I have a question for you. One of the 3 pillars of your company also is sexual trauma, right? In the sexual trauma, do they use the ketamine to help with some of that sexual trauma?
Yes, exactly. The sexual trauma treatment package developed by Danielle, who is a survivor herself and found psychedelics as part of her healing, developed this, and it is a very trauma focused treatment package with curated content and messaging around that, and more specifically into, there's like 12 pillars within that, including like shame, grief, and all this kind of stuff that you get through. So specifically, we're using ketamine therapy within that program to help people hopefully recover, is a mental recovery, to maybe rethink about a better life moving forward, maybe some forgiveness or whatever it might be, in terms of that can help them move forward and live a more normal life.
Yeah, and I imagine some of them come in with the alcoholism or drinking problem and find out it was triggered by the iceberg underneath of the sexual trauma that led them.
100%. Yeah, there's more often than not, there's something underneath.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think I've come to really believe that not all, but most people who have gotten into severe drinking and drug use are medicating. Not these aren't bad people doing bad things. These are hurting people trying to reduce their pain. And the traditional methods are not always effective. Antidepressants may or may not work. It's hard to find the combination that's just right, and they take forever. And so I mean, the 12-step programs can only go so far in resolving the past traumas. I found that you need to take some other actions, otherwise those things will follow you. So there was a question in here about warnings. There's a warning label now that's being discussed for alcohol beverages. There's discussion about it being labeled with a cancer warning. Any sense for whether that would make any difference?
You'd hope so. But it didn't. I've kind of witnessed in Ireland when my peers were smoking, they weren't really affected by the lungs and different things that they were painting onto the boxes. So I mean, look, it's one step in the right direction, I think, but it's a much higher or bigger issue, unfortunately. But yes, I mean, I definitely encourage it, and I think it should be done that way.
Yeah.
Let's see, there was another question in here that I didn't want to miss. I don't know if I can find it. So somebody asked, what are signs of to look for that might warrant a closer look or intervention, even if they don't identify as having a severe problem. So somebody's just drinking too much. Let's say you have a friend or a coworker who you just are concerned about.
Yeah, I think,
what are you looking for?
yeah. Are they arriving late to work? Are they missing work? Are they not showing up to their commitments? Or some common things to watch out for? Um, that would be like the number one I would be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And
It just sort of present itself, doesn't it? I mean, you
It
kind of know.
does.
yeah,
It's
Yeah,
interesting.
although I have also found that being a person in recovery who works in the space for the last 30 years, I still will not be sure. I'll have a parent bring in a child and say, I think he's got a problem, and I've told him he needs to talk to you about it, and then he'll tell me his drinking patterns and routines, and I'll just say, I don't know. You really need to talk to a professional. I can tell you that you're headed that way, but I can't say for sure what you need to do about it
Mhm.
because that's not my training. But I'm never quite sure. But I have learned to trust my gut. If I'm suspicious that there's something going on, and I don't know why we're afraid to ask people what's going on. You doing okay? But we just don't want to stir the water, I guess.
And I think that's the key thing is it does take two people because even though there's, the person asked what are some of the signs and all of that, the person could be looking for, but often we can't see the signs in ourselves.
Yeah.
I'll have people by the same token come to me and be like, I don't think I have a problem. And then I'm like, well, tell me about are you getting to work late? Are you showing up to work? Everything is a clear sign there's an issue. I've had people tell me, they've had multiple DUIs and they don't think they have a drinking problem.
Right.
It's like we
Mm,
can't see
yeah.
in ourselves what we don't want to see often.
Right. Well,
So
and
it
that's
takes
part of
that
the
other person. Yeah.
nature of denial is I couldn't see it. I couldn't have saved myself because I really, even to the last day that before I went into treatment, didn't think I had a problem. I knew I drank too much, but I thought it was because something else was wrong with me.
Right.
And so I wanted to fix that other thing so I could drink and shoot drugs normally.
I'm still, yeah, yeah. Do you, now,
So
Rob, I want to ask Rob one last question for you. Do you think, Pastor Ed, do your like the counselors or whatever you have that are working with people, do they like review some of the people go off and they do their dry January or whatever it is they're trying to do? They probably have them make notes and things like that. And do the counselors like review them with them and
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
okay, here's a pattern, here's this?
yeah, absolutely. We've got like mood score tracking and consumption tracking all within our kind of web app. There's kind of a medical prescription component, which is like the psychiatry, the clinicians, and so on.
Hmm.
And really, the people who are more involved, let's say in the day to day or the week to week, are the counselors, the therapists, the coaches who are more that accountability, if you will, more week to week, and are working with them to review those numbers or that progress. So it's definitely like a collaboration between a full medical team, and accountability is a huge part of that. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool.
yeah, so if somebody comes to your organization, can you just kind of tell us what they can expect? I
Yeah,
mean,
of
what?
course. So they'll come to the website, they'll complete an online assessment just to provide some insights about their drinking and maybe to assess early on if this is something that's a good fit for them. They'll sign up for an evaluation, which we have a couple of options. There are message-based evaluations, which are $50 to do the evaluation. And assuming approved for treatment and all that good stuff, medication is delivered to their home in just a couple of days. And the average cost for like a 90-day supply of medication is around $250. And it's a quarterly subscription. Now you have the opportunity to meet face to face with Dr. Monfil, who is our Chief Medical Officer, board certified psychiatrist, Mayo Clinic trained, for an additional $50 over audio visual. And that's an opportunity to get a little bit more involved with the psychiatrist. We offer liver testing. So we'll ship a liver test directly to your home so you can get and track your liver markers over time. And then on the back end, once you've signed up, you've met the psychiatrist, you've been evaluated, medications on the way, we connect you with counselors, and you have the opportunity to get to know a counselor that you may want to work with longer term if you don't already have that adequate support that is necessary for the outcomes. And then we send regular messages, reminders, track your progress. Are you taking your pills? Are you checking in with your counselor? All that good stuff all through our digital system through our web app. So it's very involved and evolving. And we're in the works about developing some companions that will be with you along the way, more of a tech solution, which will have more information coming out soon.
Fascinating. So your prices seem very reasonable.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. Well, we need to transition into a closing here. We're almost out of time. I want to thank you, Rob, for being here and for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
This has been really interesting.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Yes.
I'm going to do a short commercial here and a few announcements. So if you bear with me, we'll be done in about 4 minutes. But the Center of Addiction and Faith exists to wake up faith communities to the problem of addiction so that they can respond effectively. And so we need your support. And so I've put some pay opportunities in the chat page, and we'd love to have your support to the work we're doing. There's nobody else really doing work in this space for faith communities. And so we just really think that if we can engage faith communities more fully, we could really make a dent in this addiction crisis that the country's facing. The United States is by far got the most overdose deaths, accidental overdose deaths in the world. We have more people per capita who have drinking issues and other drug issues. We're a country of traumatized and broken people that need help, and we think we need to be talking about that. So that's the drum we pound. Is let's look at the elephant in the room. It's a big one. My great thanks to Rob Lee today from Choose Your Horizon. Thanks, Rob, again. Really appreciate your style of sharing. It's very, very accessible. And thank you, George, for leading us today. I really appreciate it. This webinar has been recorded and it will be available on our free smartphone app and on our website, along with a whole library, several years worth of webinars just like this one. So don't forget to download our app. Just go to your app store and look for Center of Addiction and Faith. It's free and everything on it are free. So take advantage of that. Next month, our webinar will feature Scott Gatsky, who he'll be discussing free resources for addiction awareness through the Addiction Technology Transfer Center. Addiction Technology Transfer Center, ATTC. They're an extension of SAMHSA, and you wouldn't believe all the free resources there are out there. And I hope you'll come and learn what those are and how you can access them. So if you're interested in doing something a little different, we have a recovery cruise coming up. We're going to the Caribbean next month on February 5th. That's less than 30 days away. We'll dive into Richard Rohr's book, Breathing Underwater, which ties this whole notion of recovery to Scripture. And he talks about biblical themes that lend themselves well to recovery and the whole process of recovery. So we have 2 cabins left. That's enough for 4 people. So if you're interested, you can go to our website. I had a link here a minute ago, but you can contact me and I'll get you the information. But thank you all for being here. Thank you for your time, and I hope you learned something you can use, and blessings on your journey, and God be with you all. There's a link. It just showed up for the cruise. Go ahead and have a look at that. Love to have you along. George, you're coming with?
I'll be there.
Yeah, should be good.
Yeah.
Go in peace.
Thanks, everyone. Ed, George.
Rob, thank you, brother.
Yeah,
If you ever
see you.
want to talk more, please let's get in touch.
No, definitely. I'm going to ask Ed to connect us via email, or I think
do
maybe
that.
you already have. That'd be great. Wonderful. Thanks,
Awesome.
I'll
everyone.
be glad
Excellent.
to do that.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.